Thank you for the positive reception and feedback on my first video for Inosuke's mask. I've been receiving a lot DMs and tags of people's completed Inosuke masks on social media. I'm happy to have been able to contribute to the journey to cosplaying best boy. I learned a lot from your comments, so please feel free to leave feedback and start a conversation because it not only helps me, but everyone else who sees it. I was going to record my voice for this, but the god said nope. AKA my house was too loud to record everything for this video. Disclaimer, this sword was made in an attempt to replicate my friend's purchased swords to be cohesive with the group cosplay. I just really wanted a wooden sword and I was not about to drop double the amount of money my friends spent on theirs because Inosuke just had to be a dual wielder. I still love you, Inosuke. I do not own nor do I have access to large machinery, so this was the solution I came up with for my purposes. I will be speaking in inches because I grew up on the imperial system, but I will also provide measurements in centimeters on the slides for the other 99% of the world using the metric system. Materials. Wood. Dimensions will be on the next slide. Sealant. I used Mod Podge hard coat. Paint. Silver, indigo gray, and black. Cloth. Preferably beige. Tape. Hot glue. Foam. And if you only have white cloth, coffee. You need 4 boards of wood that are 1/16 by 3 by 37 3/4 inches and 2 poles of wood that are 1/8 by 1/4 by 37 3/4 inches. The wood I used in this video was 36 inches. I added an additional 1 3/4 inch extension, which is explained in a later slide. Please wear appropriate protection such as a mask, gloves, goggles, etc., and work in a well-ventilated area when working with wood. The cross-section of a sword is a triangular wedge shape. We are going to replicate this effect by sandwiching the wooden pole between 2 wooden boards. The overall dimension of the sword is a 10-inch hilt and a 27 3/4 inch blade. Sketch out the sword's shape on one of the flat boards along with the chipped parts. There are 8 chipped parts in total shaped like wide pentagons. Cut out the shape. Also mark where the hilt/handle starts. Keep the larger scraps to be used for extending the hilt later on. Trace the first piece onto the other boards and cut them out. You want the pieces to match up as exact as possible. Line up the pole to the blunt sides of 2 cutout boards and glue them together. Glue in smaller sections and bend the pole slightly to line up along the blunt sides. Also trim off a tip of the pole. Now gently open the blade sides and glue. Do not use too much or glue will overflow. Be careful around the smaller crevices. You may opt for a different glue if hot glue is hard to work with. Fill in the openings with hot glue. Do not glue the hilt part. Here we're going to fill in and extend the hilt. Cut 2 10-inch long pieces from your scraps, stack them, and glue them. Insert the extension, lining up against the edge and stopping at where you mark the start of the hilt. Measure and cut pieces from your scraps to fill in the extension. Take this time to refine. You can trim down the sharp edges, use the side of the glue gun to smooth out the edges, trim parts that aren't completely lined up, and fill in cracks. Use foam to cushion the handle. Cut a 10-inch doll sheet. Width may vary depending on your foam. Wrap and glue the foam onto the hilt. Trim off any excess. Trace the bottom, cut it out, and glue it on. Cut a 1-inch doll piece and glue it at the bottom of the hilt. Prime your swords to be ready for paint. I use 2 to 3 layers of gesso. Let it dry, then paint the blade. Blunt side indigo gray and sharp side silver. Let it dry and apply 2 to 3 layers of sealant. I used Mod Podge hard coat.
Deja vu, I just been in this place before. Higher on the street, and I know it's my time.
Cut the cloth into strips. If you only have white, dye it with dye or coffee. Yes, it works. Make enough hot coffee to submerge your cloth. Leave it in for 15 to 20 minutes. Time may vary depending on your coffee and how dark you want it. I used dark roast, but blonde works too, just leave it in longer. Rinse and wring out the cloth in cold water. Hang them and let them dry. The cloth may have frayed edges. You can keep the edges or you can tuck them in as you wrap. I put the knot on first, facing the same direction as the blade side, and then wrap the hilt, but you can put the knot last when you reach the end. If the frayed edges bother you, you can paint them with Mod Podge, let it dry, and then trim the frayed edges off. I don't think Inosuke necessarily has a sheath. I think he just wraps it nilly-willy with cloth, but a sheath makes it easier to carry around. You will need foam. Measure around the blade towards the hilt with a scrap piece of foam and add 1/8 inch. This will be the height dimension of a 28-inch long piece of foam. Glue or tape into a tube. Hot glue might be too thick, so you can use super glue instead. Carefully put in the blade. Gently bend and fold the tube to the shape of the blade. Over time it will mold to the curve of the blade. Trace the bottom of the tube, paint it black, cut it out, and glue it to the bottom. You can cut out a piece of cardboard and glue it to the sheath if you want it to hold its shape. I use mine for transportation purposes, so I leave it able to bend. Carrying 2 swords is already a hassle, so I fold my sheaths and store them in my bag at events. Now wrap and glue cloth around the sheath and you're done.